Yeah, well, I mean, part of the answer actually goes back to what we did start the show with, which is Barcelona. Of course, by definition, any league title race is relative. It's about who you're up against and about how they perform. You look at Barcelona's points total, it's the worst that it's been in over a decade. You look at the number of points with which Real Madrid are going to win the league, it wouldn't have been enough to have won the league in the last two seasons in which Barcelona have done so. You look at the return from lockdown and Barcelona were 2 points clear. So Real Madrid have had an absolutely fabulous run-in during lockdown of 10 wins in a row. But had Barcelona been able to continue winning, of course it would still have not been enough. So you have to put it in the context of Barcelona's collapse and crisis. I think in truth, you also have to put it in context of that lockdown. And Zidane, Sergio Ramos, Florentino Perez, the president, have all said this. They've all said that there was something about Real Madrid that was slightly different post-lockdown. That said, of course, Madrid had had a better season than in previous years because they came back from lockdown still within touch of Barcelona. In previous years, by March, which of course is when we stopped playing, they'd already been way out of the title race, so it changed in that sense. Let me take it to New York for you. As you say, that was the day that they were beaten. They conceded 7 goals against Atletico Madrid. It was an absolute crisis. I remember one of the headlines that day said there was one team on the pitch and one ruin. One just a team in rubble, a team completely destroyed. There was nothing there. There was no plan. There was no football. There was no identity. Zidane came out after the game and said, I am convinced we will have a good season. I think one of the things we all did, and I blame myself as well, by the way, was get very excited about that and think that it was more than a pre-season friendly, which fundamentally is what it was. I think Zidane has settled things since then. I think he's seen the weaknesses and so worked to build a solid side, to build a defensively strong side, a side that occasionally, yes, has been fortunate. And as you rightly say, by the way, a side that has really not relied on big money signings. Jovic, Hazard, Bale, James, 4 most expensive players in the Real Madrid squad. 4 of the 6 most expensive players in the club's history, and their contribution between them, on average, is 9.5 games and 1.5 goals of those players. Now, in Hazard's case, it's different because he was injured. The others have just been frozen out. The others have really not had a role to play. You look at the players who have had the most minutes in the team. The top 9 are all new players. The 10th is Mendy. The top 9 are all old players. The 10th is a new player, Mendy, a left back. Now, he's been important, but not massively important. He shared the minutes more or less with Marcelo. I think what we've seen with Zidane is a return to the old guard, a return to his trust in the players that won 3 Champions Leagues. And maybe there's a lesson here for Barcelona. You asked me in a minute ago, what's the reason for optimism at Barcelona? The optimism is they've got a very good squad. Real Madrid looked to be in a mess 12 months ago, but the optimism was there were still good players in that squad. Even if it was an ageing squad, even if it was problematic, even if they weren't scoring as many goals as they used to be, even if they didn't have Cristiano Ronaldo anymore, there were still things there. And what Zidane did, of course, was connect to the squad as he always had done, emotionally, tactically look at what he could do plausibly in terms of building a structure that would work, that would protect them. And then, of course, in the context of a season in which neither Atletico Madrid nor Barcelona will ultimately feel like they reached the kind of figures in points that they would have hoped for.
Dude, there was a time when Zidane's reputation as a manager was basically just that, a man manager. You look at the work this year, though, it's getting harder and harder to argue, not just that he's among the best managers in the world, but that he's not the best manager in the world. When do you think he'll shed that man-manager image?
Well, I mean, the amazing thing is that he still hasn't, even with this title race. I think there are a number of reasons for it. Now, first and foremost, let's start with something very basic. Zinedine Zidane has won 3 Champions Leagues. He has never not won the Champions League so far. Now, obviously, that could happen this season. He has been at Real Madrid at 5 seasons, but it's actually 3 complete seasons and 2 parts of seasons. In those 2 parts of seasons where he came in late, once in January and once in March, he couldn't win the league. In other words, in the 3 seasons in which he could have won the league, he's won it twice. He's won a trophy every 19 games at Real Madrid. I mean, his record is extraordinary. And you're right, and there is still this slight resistance. There's still this idea that he's only a man manager. Now, let's start with the basics, shall we? First things first, only a man manager, as if that was easy at a club like Real Madrid. As if that is all it takes. We've just seen at Barcelona how difficult that is. This is one of the accusations people made about Valverde too. Only a man manager. Well, he won 2 league titles. The people who followed him didn't. Zidane won 3 European Cups. The people who followed him didn't. Zidane has won 2 league titles. That's 2 of only 3 that Real Madrid have won in 12 years. So first things first, let's have a bit more respect maybe for man management skills, which is a huge part of modern football. But the other part of this is if you watch Real Madrid this season tactically, they don't look like the Zidane teams that won 3 Champions League in a row. They look different. Obviously, they're likely to without Cristiano Ronaldo. But they score far fewer goals and concede far fewer. They've solidified. They've looked at their limitations and been aware of that and worked around that. You look at the tactical variations this year. We've seen a team play 4-3-3. We've seen them play 4-5-1. We've seen them play 4-4-2. We've seen a 4-2-3-1. We've seen him shift through those formations. Yes, we've seen a stability of players that play, and it is the old guard. But I think we've seen tactical nuances that we didn't see there before. We see a team that goes and wins the ball much higher up the pitch. We see a team that's much more prepared to bring the ball out from the back, that doesn't go long from the goalkeeper as often. And at Granada, for example, we saw that very, very clearly. So I think we are seeing these things, but we still do get, and I think you're right, that idea that, well, it's about the players. And do you know who is most guilty of not making this about Zidane? Who is most guilty of always talking about the players as if it's easy to manage this squad? Who is most guilty of basically undermining Zidane's role in all of this? Zinedine Zidane is. And that is part of the reason.